Thank you for watching our presentation, Conference Critique and Analysis of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Programming. If you want to learn more about our findings, please read our contributed paper with the same name. Throughout this presentation, we will be using the acronym EDI, which stands for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that we here in Las Vegas are on the traditional lands of at least 15 bands of Southern Paiute tribes. The lands and people were disrupted by trade routes, the Mexican-American War, the Mormons, the railroad, and settlers. This colonization brought disease, death, and destruction to the indigenous people. We are guests on this land and have committed ourselves to listening and supporting indigenous people through financial contributions to the Las Vegas Indian Center and asking UNLV to offer Southern Paiute language classes. All right, let's begin. Good morning, or afternoon, or night, I guess. I am Brittany Paloma Fiedler. I'm a teaching and learning librarian at UNLV.
Howdy, y'all. I'm Brittany Sterling, and I'm the Social Sciences and Interdisciplinary Studies librarian at UNLV. Okay, so today we're going to start by talking about why we engaged in this research, a quick overview of our methods, and then spend most of this presentation in our findings and recommendations. This research project started because JCLC 2018 and ACRL 2019 were in the same fiscal year for us, and we ended up sharing rooms, flying on discount airlines, and spending our personal money to attend both, while our white librarian colleagues didn't even know about JCLC, or if they did, wondered why we as academic librarians needed to go. At JCLC, we attended an amazing presentation, Our Librarianship/Archival Practice is Not for White People, and the description noted that at many conferences, presentations about EDI don't always move beyond surface level awareness that prioritizes white experiences and feelings. In our analysis and our experience, we discovered that this is true. Additionally, we found that many program titles and descriptions misuse the language of EDI. One library conference program about EDI was really about how learning styles are equal. Another, with diverse panelists, meant that they came from a diversity of places in the United States. Another said libraries should include more civility between colleagues. Today we'll explore the way EDI is in fact trending at ACRL, but why that's not necessarily a good thing. Finally, we will offer recommendations for what institutions, conferences, and librarians can do. So a content analysis is typically performed on forms of human communication. It's a method of detailed and systematic examination of the contents of a particular body of material for the purpose of identifying patterns, themes, or biases. It's frequently used in library research. We examined 6 conference programs, 3 from the Joint Conference of Librarians of Color, or JCLC, which was the first and continues to be the only conference sponsored by all 5 ethnic affiliates of ALA, Isla, Apala, Bacala, Kala, and Reforma. We also analyzed the corresponding years of ACRL, the largest and most prestigious conference in the US for academic librarians. We did not include keynotes, author events, or socials. We did include any presentation format that was consistent across years and contained both a title and description. So before we jump into our findings, we do want to note that all of the conference program titles and descriptions are real, and we ask everyone to try not to focus on the identities of the people behind the text. We'll discuss findings by the numbers, problematic phrases, semantic bleaching, specific versus sweeping language, and cultivating the careers of librarians of color. We use these examples not to show the pervasiveness of the problems we have identified, not to call out any one individual. In fact, Brittany was one of the presenters for a conference session we will describe later. Additionally, we did not and could not have attended all of the conference sessions we coded and analyzed, so we do not know the content or conclusions that were ultimately shared with attendees. Based on hearsay, we initially assumed that there would not be much content related to academic librarianship at JCLC. This turned out not to be true at all. Between 1/3 and 1/2 of programs at JCLC are about MLIS programs, academic libraries, or university archives. We also assumed, based on our own experiences at ACRL, that there would not be a significant amount of content related to EDI at ACRL. We found that the amount is increasing from less than 1% in 2007 to almost 20% in 2019. And that includes programs related to underrepresented librarians, underrepresented students, LGBTQI communities, disabilities, cultural competency, and general programs related to diversity that weren't more specific. When we have to choose which conference to go to, we have discovered we're asking ourselves the same question we ask in many spaces in higher education. Are we academic librarians, or are we librarians of color? ACRL, as we know, is very competitive, and there's pressure to write a title and program description that stands out. We weren't planning on looking for problematic phrases when we started this research, but we found them, and we share them to remind everyone to consider the perspective of a marginalized colleague who could be harmed by these attempts to be pithy. One fat-phobic example used the expression "after the freshman 15" in a program about library instruction. A law librarian used the phrase "separate but equal" to discuss the faculty status of librarians. One session used the phrase "tribal differences" in the title, even though the description clarifies it is referring to disciplinary differences in scholarly communication practices rather than indigenous tribes. And finally, a program discussed the value of intersectional work while really referring to the intersection of information literacy and scholarly communication, rather than Kimberly Crenshaw's 1989 term intersectionality, which is about the way in which various forms of inequality often operate together and exacerbate each other, specifically the intersecting oppression of racism and sexism that Black women face.
Okay, so another thing we noticed in our analysis is that the words diversity and diverse are experiencing semantic bleaching, which is a term from linguistics that describes when a word loses its intention. From describing a very narrow set of ideas, it comes to describe an ever broader range of them and eventually may lose its meaning altogether. So the easiest example of semantic bleaching is the word guys. Over time and repetition, guys stops being specific to men and starts to include women and non-binary people. This seems harmless, and Brittany and I have been known to use the word guys even when addressing a group entirely made up of women, but we are trying to stop because we agree with sociologist Cheryl Kleinman, who identifies the word guys as the most insidious of all the so-called gender-neutral language because it reinforces the message that men are the standard and women and non-binary people should be subsumed by the male category. When the word diversity is semantically bleached of its EDI meaning to simply be a synonym for different, it reinforces the message that a group of white people can be diverse as long as they have some kind of difference. The ACRL definition of diversity actually says, quote, state or fact of being diverse, different characteristics and experiences that define individuals. So diversity could include literally anything. It's unsurprising that over the years, people have started to use the word diverse as a synonym for different. And again, this is a gradual thing that happens over time. So in 2007, we have no examples of semantic bleaching because the words diverse and diversity are only used in programs about EDI. In 2013, we have 5 examples. A program with diverse institutions went on to describe how those institutions are different. They are urban and suburban, residential and commuter, public and private. Other programs didn't go into specifics at all. They simply mentioned diverse groups, extremely diverse roles, diverse digital collections, and diverse constituents. Besides containing the word diverse, there was no other indication that these programs were related to EDI at all. In 2019, we have 17 examples of diversity as a synonym for different. There are diverse student populations who have diverse lived experiences, diverse roles, diverse needs, diversity of needs, diverse learning styles. There were also diverse directors, a diverse group, diverse people, diverse voices, and diverse campuses and diverse communities. There were geographically diverse libraries. There were diverse ways that librarians use the framework. There was a lack of gender diversity that only references women and men and thus excludes non-binary, genderqueer, and two-spirit people. And finally, a service like academic ebook delivery is diverse. When you write or say a word over and over and over, it starts to sound like it's not even a word anymore. In ACRL conference programs and maybe in librarianship as a whole, the word diversity is being used so often that it has lost its semantic force, its definition, its specificity. It is being semantically bleached. This is a problem because in EDI research, diversity is about groups of people with marginalized identities. And in our fields, that usually means librarians who are traditionally underrepresented and students who are traditionally underserved. When people generalize the word diversity and bleach it of its meaning, it makes it more difficult for EDI researchers to find actual EDI research. And it makes it seem like all research is EDI research. Again, none of these programs had any indication that they were about EDI at all. They're just using the words. So we did not code any of the previous examples under EDI. The numbers that Brittany mentioned earlier of less than 1%, almost 5%, and almost 20% are for ACRL sessions that actually appeared to be about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And this seems like a good thing. It seems like, interest has increased, presentations have increased. But we noticed that compared to JCLC programs, ACRL programs use very general sweeping language, and ACRL programs are not interested in cultivating the careers of librarians of color. So JCLC programs use really specific nuanced language that showed a deep understanding of the EDI content being discussed, while ACRL programs used very sweeping generalized language. We don't know if the presentations were more specific than the titles and presentations because we can't go to all of them. But we are people who purposefully seek out EDI-related content, and based on our experiences, the presentations are often not more specific than the descriptions implied. This means that people who don't have expertise in EDI are often presenting very watered down or surface level presentations about the very basics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, what does specific language look like? Here's a title from JCLC. Reaching out to immigrant communities in our backyards. 2 case studies, the New Americans program at Queens Library and building a Vietnamese language collection at CSU Fullerton. This is just the title. The description goes on to explain that the CSUF is in the process of developing a Vietnamese degree program. It is the first of its kind in the United States. And so they want to share how the library collection needed to change to support that program and the challenge in growing a language collection, which is a challenge for any library. The JCLC program is clear about what aspect of diversity it's discussing, what student group is impacted, and why academic librarians might be interested. And we see this throughout all 3 years of JCLC titles and descriptions. On the other hand, this ACRL poster description promises to explain how to stimulate an understanding of cultures, race, religion, ethnicity, gender, and disability. This could be about literally anything. And we saw this type of listing of many marginalized identities in a row happen frequently at ACRL. In another example, a 100-word program description includes the word diversity 4 times, accessibility 3 times, equity twice, and inclusion twice, leaving just 89 words to describe how they would be addressing these 4 different concepts in a single poster. Using these buzzwords might draw people in, but these generic EDI sessions don't help people as much as they might think they do. And ACRL continuing to offer them sends a message that it is okay in 2019 to still be learning the very basics about EDI in a professional development setting, and that there is no space for specific, nuanced EDI research at ACRL. There are exceptions, of course, and these were primarily from librarians of color. Another pattern that we noticed is that JCLC programming supports and cultivates librarians of color at every step of our career: graduate programs, diversity residencies, publishing, leadership development, etc. The goals for diversity and inclusion in librarianship must be expanded to include recruitment, retention, and promotion. Librarians of color tend to recognize each other's leadership skills and celebrate them, while their white colleagues tend to do the opposite. So even in cultivating the careers of librarians of color, at JCLC, we see specificity. The ripple effect, fostering an interest in librarianship among talented undergrads, conceptualizing diversity and inclusion in information sciences as doctoral students of color, gumbo stew, recipes for navigating academic publishing, and an intimate conversation with LAS deans and directors of color. As librarians of color, we felt like everyone on all of these panels truly wants us to be successful in our careers, but we don't necessarily feel that way at ACRL. So over the 3 years of JCLC, there's been about 364 programs, and 13 of those programs are about leadership development of librarians of color. At ACRL, looking at our corresponding years, there were 932 programs and only 4 programs about leadership development of librarians of color. Meanwhile, there were 9 programs about recruitment. And yes, it is absolutely important to recruit librarians of color, but maybe we would not need to be recruited so much if we could actually stay in the profession. By presenting the lack of diversity in our profession as a problem of recruitment, we are ignoring the fact that we are often forced out of our jobs because of toxicity and racism.
Okay, so in this section, we will describe some recommendations for institutions which fund conference travel, non-marginalized presenters who care to be more thoughtful, conference planners, and librarians of color who will be future conference attendees. Firstly, institutions should validate interest in EDI-related research, period. Equity, diversity, and inclusion research is a legitimate field of study and research trajectory. To step back for a second, when we express interest in going to conferences related to our non-EDI job duties and research areas, such as political science for me or composition programs for Brittany, our colleagues and administrators understand our interest. Similar understanding is appreciated for interest in EDI-focused conferences and programming, which leads me to my second recommendation. Librarians of color should make a case for funding to attend whatever combination of conferences allows for true development of their research interests, and their institution should consider them, including those solely focused on EDI. Real decisions are made by others as regards the perceptions of which conferences we attend. Things like tenure portfolio critique and annual ratings recommendations are decided by colleagues who very much care about factors such as conference reputations and perceived rigor. We can say that as librarians of color interested in EDI, many of our research needs are not being met at the most prestigious conference or other better known conferences of similar composition. For non-marginalized librarians, they should think critically about their contribution to EDI work. There's a perception that showcasing EDI scholarship constitutes a professional wokeness, which demonstrates an effort to be inclusive. But for those who are just dabbling for CV credit and a trendy title, a surface level conversation about differences is not enough to earn you a gold star. Are you actually interested in progressing this area of librarianship, or does it allow you to check off your diversity goal for the year? Similarly, does it come to your attention when EDI work is being presented with no librarians of color involved or no findings that would pertain to them? In a profession that is hell-bent on diverse recruitment but struggles with attrition, are you doing things like asking to engage in scholarship with your colleagues of color in EDI work? Are you seeking out their perspectives? Do you intentionally build on the work of your colleagues of color or intentionally cite them if you do claim interest? These are all questions to consider as you choose to engage in these areas. They're not trendy buzzwords. There are lives affected by this scholarship. So for conference planners, all librarians need to be mindful of their use of language. We are information finding experts after all, and we should check to see if our understanding of certain words, accessibility, diversity, social justice, intersectionality, etc., matches what they actually mean in the literature. We would expect a committee to not allow a description with the word assessment to be selected if there were no actual indication of assessment, and would like to see the same standards applied to other words that contain meaning in queer studies, critical race studies, EDI research, etc. When compiling a selection committee, it's essential that it is made up of those with a variety of perspectives and expertise. There needs to be a base level understanding of what constitutes true EDI programming. The content difference between these two conferences was shocking, to say the least. At well-known conferences, marginalized librarians are often presenting about their very existence and painful lived experiences, whereas competing offerings are able to skirt by with programming about diverse tutorials, equal faculty experiences, and intersectional department work. As there were a bounty of potential programming options mentioned in slide 18 for thoughtful and complex topics of interest, we know this is not the issue when selecting things related to EDI research. It needs to be made explicitly clear that there is space for these deeper dives in lieu of vague nods to the words equity, diversity, and inclusion. And lastly, for marginalized librarians, To answer the question, are we librarians of color or are we academic librarians? I know you won't be surprised to hear that we are solidly both. As Ralph Ellison reminds us, I'm a man of substance, of flesh and bone, fiber and liquids, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. In this analysis, we found ourselves wondering how competent professionals, experts by many people's estimation really, could continue to settle for a self-congratulatory form of scholarship in which they say both lots of words and absolutely nothing. Ellison sums this up best by saying, I'm standing puzzled, unable to decide whether the veil is really being lifted or lowered more firmly in place, whether I'm witnessing a revelation or a more efficient blinding. We highlight throughout this presentation numbers that speak for themselves, and we are well within our professional purview to tell those who want our patronage what we want. So, wherever you choose to attend, present, contribute, or bolster knowledge, do it in a place where you feel as though some thought was put into what would appeal to you as a person and as a researcher. We can't tell you which choice is the better choice for you because only you can decide that. But what we can tell you is that if you're interested in truly engaging EDI programming, then basing your choice on your colleagues' understanding of what is the most prestigious may not be the path to those things. You'll have to ask yourself if the difference between prestige and actual professional development matters to you. Your research is valid, and you deserve to get your professional needs met.
Yes, thank you, Brittany. Thank you for viewing our presentation. Our citations from this presentation are briefly listed here, but you can find more about our research and a more robust list of the research that we're building on at the end of our contributed paper. Thank you.
Thank you.